Welcome to the Veil of Truth, your gateway to uncovering hidden insights and illuminating mysteries. I'm thrilled you've joined our global community. Whether you're watching from a bustling city skyline or a quiet countryside, we're glad you're here. Globe showing Europe, Africa, so tell me, where are you tuning in from today? Chapter 1, The Invitation. Hercule Poirot sat in his meticulously arranged sitting room in London, the afternoon sun slanting gently through the lace curtains. His small, precise hands hovered over a cup of perfectly brewed tea, though he did not yet sip. Something had caught his attention, a letter, unusual in its formality, resting upon the polished surface of his writing desk. The envelope was cream-colored, thick, and bore no postage stamp. The handwriting was elegant, flowing, yet with a certain insistence in its pressure. Poirot picked it up delicately, observing the texture of the paper, the slight unevenness of the ink. These, he knew, revealed much about the sender, their social standing, education, perhaps even their temperament. He broke the seal with the ceremonious care of a man who treasured ritual and observation alike. The letter read, Monsieur Poirot, I entreat your assistance with utmost discretion. A matter of grave importance has arisen at Ashcombe Hall. I fear a tragedy is imminent, concerning the Crimson Carousel, a painting of considerable value and peculiar history. Your presence is urgently requested. A friend of truth. Poirot allowed himself a small, satisfied smile. Déjà intrigue. A request so vaguely alarming was precisely the sort of challenge that stirred the little grey cells. He noted the careful use of the words grave importance and peculiar history, both phrases betraying the sender's anxiety and their desire for discretion. I am curious, Poirot murmured, why such mystery? A man or woman of caution, and yet a dramatic flair. He sipped his tea, the warm liquid steadying his mind. The Crimson Carousel, The very name suggests a painting most unusual. The game begins. Within the hour, arrangements had been made. Poirot engaged a carriage to Ashcombe Hall, some 90 miles into the serene English countryside. He wore a crisp grey suit, his signature moustache trimmed to perfection, and a silk cravat tied with care. Even the journey, though long, was an opportunity to meditate, to ready his observations, and to reflect on the human passions that invariably lurked behind every mystery. The country road wound between hedgerows tinged with early autumn gold. As Poirot's carriage approached the estate, he observed the tall wrought-iron gates, their design elaborate, almost theatrical, and the faint glimmer of windows high upon the manor's facade. Something about the setting, Poirot thought, promised both elegance and secrets. Upon arrival, he was greeted by the butler, a tall man with a severe expression, whose movements were precise yet slightly too stiff to be entirely natural. Poirot's eyes flicked to the man's polished shoes, the careful cufflinks, and the faint trace of dirt beneath his fingernails, details that would be insignificant to most, but never to a detective of acute observation. Monsieur Poirot, we are honored, the butler intoned, bowing slightly. I am Harrow, steward of Ashcombe Hall. Sir Reginald will see you presently. Merci, monsieur. I am pleased, Poirot replied smoothly, his voice a gentle melody, imbued with both courtesy and scrutiny. The hall itself was an exhibition of opulence, walls adorned with ancestral portraits, rich tapestries depicting hunts and feasts, and the soft gleam of polished wood. Poirot's eyes, however, quickly moved beyond mere decoration to the subtle signs of household dynamics, the way Lady Evelyn, Sir Reginald's young niece, nervously clasped a handkerchief. The faint tension in Harrow's posture, the way a fire crackled with careful predictability, as if to suggest controlled warmth where emotions might simmer. Sir Reginald Ashcombe, a man of imposing stature and dignified bearing, received Poirot in the drawing-room. His expression was courteous but guarded, the faint shadow of a worry line creasing his forehead. Monsieur Poirot, he began, voice deep and deliberate, I am grateful you could come at such short notice. There is a matter of great delicacy concerning my collection." Poirot inclined his head, noting every nuance, the precise choice of words, the hesitation before great delicacy. "I understand, sir. You refer to the Crimson Carousel." Sir Reginald's eyes widened slightly, as if surprised by Poirot's knowledge. "Yes, precisely. It is a painting of singular beauty, and yet its history is troubled. There have been threats, minor at first, then more serious, regarding its safety. I fear someone may attempt to claim it by less than honest means." Poirot's small eyes sparkled. "Ah, the human mind, monsieur, how predictably it reveals itself in fear. And who, sir, might wish to take this painting? Do you suspect a person, or for passion?" Sir Reginald hesitated, then gestured to a window overlooking the gardens. "It is difficult to say. The estate is vast. Many come and go, family, guests, servants, even dealers. But, I assure you, the painting's disappearance would not be for mere financial gain. There is something personal at play, I am certain." Poirot's fingers, always poised for thought, tapped lightly against his knee. He observed Lady Evelyn closely now, noting the nervous flutter of her eyes toward her uncle, the way she held herself with practiced grace. Her youth belied a keen awareness of every detail in the room, a subtle clue that she might know more than she admitted. "I shall, of course, investigate discreetly," Poirot assured Sir Reginald. "But first, I must observe, monsieur, like a careful painter studies a canvas before touching brush to paint. The key, you see, lies in human nature, the passions and vanities that drive men and women to extraordinary acts." Sir Reginald inclined his head gravely. "You speak wisely. And I trust your judgment entirely, Monsieur Poirot." The day drew on, and Poirot conducted a careful survey of the house. He examined the corridors, the drawing room where the painting was displayed, and even the gallery itself. Every detail seemed to carry meaning, the slightly ajar window latch, the faint scuff marks on the floor, and the placement of decorative objects, deliberate, or perhaps unconscious indicators of tension. By evening, the household gathered for tea. Poirot observed them in quiet contemplation, noting relationships, subtle gestures, and minute expressions that betrayed hidden thoughts. He smiled politely, but behind that calm exterior his mind was already at work, assembling a mosaic of possible motives, threats, and deceptions. And as the last rays of sunlight painted the hall in gold, Poirot knew one thing with certainty: the Crimson Carousel would not remain untouched for long, and he would need every bit of his methodical skill, his unparalleled observation, and his understanding of the human heart to uncover the truth. For, as always, the game of detection had begun, and it promised to be most intricate. Chapter 2: The Disappearance. The morning after Poirot's arrival at Ashcombe Hall dawned crisp and clear, a perfect English autumn day. The gardens glimmered with dew, and the leaves crunched underfoot as servants moved with quiet purpose. Yet, beneath the serene exterior, tension simmered, a tension that Poirot perceived immediately. He had breakfasted alone with Sir Reginald, who spoke little but watched the detective with an anxious intensity. Lady Evelyn had flitted in and out, her composure immaculate yet her fingers betraying slight tremors, a subtle sign that Poirot noted with meticulous care. "Will the painting remain on display today, sir?" Poirot asked, his voice smooth, courteous, yet probing. Sir Reginald's jaw tightened. "Yes, of course. I have made certain it is secure, but, well, one cannot be too careful. I do hope your stay is unnecessary in its length, Monsieur Poirot." "Ah, but necessity is precisely my métier," Poirot replied, smiling faintly. "And the precautions, they are sometimes as revealing as the crime itself, n'est-ce pas?" It was not long after breakfast that the first gathering took place, a small assembly of the household and a few invited guests. The drawing room, where the Crimson Carousel was displayed, was filled with light from the wide bay windows. The painting itself, a swirling, dynamic scene of dancers and musicians in rich crimson tones, seemed almost alive under the autumn sun. Poirot surveyed the room with his usual precision, the positions of the guests, the way each held themselves, the subtle micro-expressions that betrayed thought and emotion. Lady Evelyn chatted politely with the visiting art dealer, Mr. Whitlock, whose easy charm masked an underlying self-interest that Poirot detected instantly. Mr. Harrow, the butler, maintained his impeccable poise, yet his knuckles were faintly white as he rested his hands upon the mahogany sideboard. Poirot, ever observant, allowed his gaze to linger on the painting. He noted the frame's slight shadowing, the subtle light falling across the figures, and a faint smudge upon the lower right corner, an imperfection that might otherwise escape notice, but to Poirot spoke volumes. The conversation meandered politely, with topics ranging from the upcoming autumn fairs to recent developments in European art collections. Yet Poirot, though appearing attentive, was quietly calculating. Every word, every glance, every movement was being recorded in his mind, as he weighed the likelihood of deception or hidden motives. It was just before noon when the disruption occurred. The household had moved to the sunroom for tea, a cozy chamber lined with plants and velvet settees. Poirot had excused himself for a moment to examine a ledger in the study when a sudden cry shattered the calm. He arrived swiftly to find Lady Evelyn near tears, pointing toward the drawing room. "The painting! It's gone!" Poirot's small eyes narrowed. He moved deliberately, not hurriedly, for he knew that haste could destroy the delicate evidence that remained. The frame, once ornate and vibrant, was now conspicuously empty upon the wall. Sir Reginald's face, normally so composed, betrayed shock, then a flicker of anger. "Impossible! I locked it myself last night. How could this happen?" Poirot raised a hand. "Monsieur, calm, Illinois Vals Plat. Observe first, react second. Often, the culprit wishes for a reaction. We must deny them that satisfaction." He examined the frame, the locks, and the surrounding wall with meticulous care. The lock had been forced, but only subtly, as though by a practiced hand. He inspected the floor beneath the easel, noting faint footprints in the polished parquet. They were small, narrow, hardly the size of a grown man, yet difficult to attribute immediately. Poirot's gaze moved to the windows. They were closed, though the latches showed no signs of tampering. He crouched slightly, observing the faintest smudge of red upon the sill. "Red paint," he murmured. "Deliberate, or careless? We shall see." He turned his attention to the assembled guests. Lady Evelyn's hands trembled, though she sought to compose herself. Mr. Whitlock's expression was one of polite concern, yet his eyes betrayed a quick calculation, a consideration of personal gain. Mr. Harrow remained immobile, his stern features betraying the slightest twitch of unease. "Now, Illinois Vals Plat," Poirot began, his voice calm but firm, "I shall ask each of you to recall precisely your actions this morning, from the moment you awoke until the moment the absence of the painting was discovered. Any omission, intentional or otherwise, may prove crucial." One by one, the household members recounted their movements. Lady Evelyn had taken a morning stroll through the gardens, alone. Mr. Whitlock had inspected the stables, speaking briefly with the grooms. Harrow had overseen the preparation of breakfast and the movement of tea service. Each statement seemed plausible, yet Poirot's mind catalogued each detail, searching for inconsistencies. A brief examination of the garden revealed something curious, a small footprint, pressed into the soft earth beneath a rose bush. Poirot crouched, inspecting it carefully. It was slender, almost delicate, and appeared to match neither the size nor gait of the principal guests. Yet it did not belong to any of the household staff he had observed. Poirot rose slowly. "Curious," he murmured, half to himself. Monsieur, mademoiselle, this is only the beginning. The footprint and the smudge, these are not coincidences. Someone has left a message for us, albeit unintentionally. And often, the smallest clue reveals the largest truth. Sir Reginald paced, muttering to himself. But why? Why my painting? There is no quarrel, no dispute of value, nothing. Poirot inclined his head slightly, a faint smile playing upon his lips. Ah, monsieur, it is not always the visible quarrel that motivates a crime. Often, it is envy, pride, or a hidden resentment. The human mind, like a painting, contains layers unseen at first glance. And I intend to peel them away, layer by layer. By late afternoon, Poirot had begun his subtle inquiries, speaking to each guest in private. He observed not only what they said but how they said it, the hesitation in Lady Evelyn's voice when asked about the garden, the slight overemphasis in Mr. Whitlock's claim to have been inspecting the stables, the rigidity in Harrow's posture as he described breakfast arrangements. Each nuance, to Poirot, was a piece of a puzzle far larger than any single action or person. As evening fell over Ashcombe Hall, the atmosphere had shifted from polite concern to tense anticipation. The empty space where the Crimson Carousel had hung was a silent accusation. Poirot, ever composed, moved among the household quietly, his mind already assembling theories, testing possibilities, and calculating the most subtle interactions that might reveal the truth. And as the last light of day filtered through the autumn leaves, Poirot murmured softly to himself, the faintest smile upon his lips. "Oh, Miss Amos, the game begins in earnest. The thief has left us clues, and I, Hercule Poirot, shall follow them with the precision of a surgeon and the patience of an artist. The Crimson Carousel shall be found, and the truth, in all its complexity, shall be revealed." Chapter 3, Shadows of the Past. The morning after the Crimson Carousel disappeared was shrouded in a quiet tension that settled over Ashcombe Hall like a heavy fog. The guests moved about with polite restraint, but Poirot, ever observant, noticed the tremor beneath the surface, a nervous glance, a hand brushing too quickly across a table, a faint sigh suppressed by a tight-lipped smile. Over breakfast, Sir Reginald appeared less composed than usual. His normally steady hand trembled slightly as he poured his tea, and his eyes flicked repeatedly toward the empty space where the painting had hung. Lady Evelyn, seated beside him, kept her gaze lowered, her delicate hands clasped so tightly that her knuckles were pale. Poirot observed quietly, noting every micro-expression, every flicker of tension. Then, at last, he spoke. "Sir Reginald, you have mentioned the history of this painting is troubled." "Yes," Sir Reginald replied, his voice lower, almost reluctant. "The Crimson Carousel has changed hands many times over the centuries. Owners have vanished, fortunes have been lost, scandals have erupted. It is said the painting brings both admiration and misfortune in equal measure." Poirot's small eyes sparkled. "Ah, mon Dieu, a past wrapped in misfortune. Always more enticing than mere theft. May I see records of its provenance?" Poirot asked politely. "Even minor details may prove most useful. Sometimes the past whispers secrets that the present cannot yet understand." Sir Reginald nodded and led Poirot to the estate library, a room lined with towering shelves of leather-bound volumes. He handed Poirot a folder containing letters, bills of sale, and old photographs. Poirot spread them carefully before him, examining each with precision. The first letters were from previous owners, some boasting of acquiring the painting, others lamenting their misfortune afterward. One particularly aged letter, yellowed and brittle, hinted at a violent quarrel over ownership, followed by a mysterious disappearance. A photograph depicted the painting framed in the ornate hall of a European collector, the figures within it captured with an almost eerie realism. Poirot noted a small detail in each photograph, a symbol, a tiny, spiraling mark in crimson paint, appeared near the bottom right corner. "Curious," Poirot murmured, pointing delicately. The artist's signature, perhaps, or a hidden message. Something repeated, something deliberate. Sir Reginald frowned. I had not noticed that before. The painting's history is clouded with rumor. Some say the symbol brings luck, others that it heralds misfortune. Superstition, of course. Ah, but monsieur, humans are as superstitious as they are greedy. And both can be motives for extraordinary acts, Poirot replied. Over the course of the morning, Poirot continued his investigation, speaking with members of the household individually. Lady Evelyn, when questioned, recounted her morning stroll through the gardens, emphasizing the tranquility she had observed. Poirot noted the hesitation in her tone when she mentioned passing a servant near the rose garden, a minor inconsistency, though perhaps innocuous. Mr. Whitlock, the art dealer, was charming and smooth, but Poirot's keen eye detected a flicker of impatience when asked about the painting's insurance. He claimed to have been inspecting stables that morning but could not account for the exact time spent in each location. Poirot filed this away as a detail to consider later. Harrow, the butler, maintained a professional distance, yet Poirot observed a subtle rigidity in his posture when asked about the gallery. His explanation was precise, almost rehearsed, and the slightest twitch of his fingers betrayed inattention. Curious, Poirot thought. Even the calmest mask may conceal a storm. Poirot then turned his attention to the painting itself, or rather, its absence. He retraced the steps around the empty frame, noting the scuff marks on the floorboards and the faint red smudge upon the window sill. These traces, minor to anyone else, were essential threads in the tapestry of the investigation. But it was the past of the painting that intrigued him most. Poirot's research revealed that the Crimson Carousel had been part of a series commissioned by a European noble family, known for rivalries that escalated into duels and bitter disputes. One owner, a wealthy collector in Paris, had vanished mysteriously, leaving letters that implied betrayal within the household. Another, a British aristocrat, had sold the painting hastily after a scandal involving embezzlement. Poirot's mind began weaving connections, observing patterns that others might dismiss. Ah, he murmured softly to himself, this is no mere theft for profit. This is envy, pride, and perhaps even revenge, stretching across decades. His contemplation was interrupted by a soft footstep. Lady Evelyn had returned to the library, holding a small bundle of letters she claimed belonged to her late father. She placed them carefully on the desk, her eyes wary. Perhaps these will help, Monsieur Poirot, she said. He was interested in the painting. He left notes, though some are difficult to decipher. Poirot carefully examined the letters. They contained references to previous owners, mention of rival collectors, and hints at secret locations where the painting's companions had been hidden. One letter, in particular, caught his attention. It spoke cryptically of a hidden compartment in the gallery and a watcher who sees all. Poirot's fingers tapped lightly on the desk. Ah, mon Dieu, the plot thickens. There is someone, or perhaps someones, who seek to control not only the painting but the knowledge it contains. And I suspect they are closer than we think. The day passed with Poirot cataloguing his observations. He retraced steps, reviewed letters, and made careful sketches of the gallery and garden. Every detail was noted, from the exact angle of light on the empty frame to the positions of furniture, which might reveal paths of movement invisible to the casual eye. By late afternoon, Poirot gathered Lady Evelyn in private. Mademoiselle, he said gently, your uncle fears for the painting, yes, but I sense that your own knowledge may hold keys unseen. Do not fear to share what you know. Often, truth is hidden not in secrecy, but in hesitation. Lady Evelyn's eyes widened slightly, and she bit her lip, as though weighing the wisdom of confession. She nodded slowly. I may have noticed something yesterday. A visitor, not one of the usual household, who lingered near the gallery longer than seemed necessary. I did not think to mention it at the time. Poirot's small eyes sparkled. Excellent, mademoiselle. Very good. We must observe all who enter this house with care, for appearances are deceiving. The human mind is, how you say, a labyrinth. And I intend to map every corridor. As evening approached, Poirot retired to a quiet corner of the library. The empty space where the painting had hung seemed almost to mock him, yet he was undeterred. In his mind, the threads of history, human emotion, and opportunity were intertwining, creating a pattern invisible to all but the most patient observer. Yes, he murmured softly, stroking his moustache, the past casts long shadows. And it is within those shadows that the truth hides. The game grows more complex, and I must be ever vigilant. The thief has moved, the motives are masked, and the story of the Crimson Carousel is far from complete. But rest assured, I shall uncover every secret. Poirot leaned back in his chair, his small eyes gleaming with quiet determination. The shadows of the past had been illuminated, but the present held far more peril, and far greater intrigue. Chapter 4: Secrets Behind Closed Doors. The morning at Ashcombe Hall carried an air of quiet apprehension, a tension that hovered as subtly as the sunlight filtering through the tall windows. Hercule Poirot, ever composed, observed the household with his characteristic attention to minutiae, the slight quiver of Lady Evelyn's hand as she arranged her tea, the careful avoidance of eye contact from Mr. Whitlock, and the barely perceptible tapping of Mr. Harrow's polished shoes against the floor as he carried out his duties. Poirot knew, as always, that truth revealed itself not in words alone, but in gestures, silences, and inconsistencies. He began his day with private interviews, intending to understand the complex web of relationships, motivations, and potential deceptions. He first called Lady Evelyn to the drawing room. She appeared anxious, yet her posture remained elegant, almost practiced. "Mademoiselle," Poirot began, his voice gentle yet incisive, "yesterday you mentioned a visitor. Can you describe this person with precision?" Lady Evelyn nodded, a flicker of hesitation crossing her features. He was tall, dark-haired, with sharp features. His coat was of fine quality, and he moved, deliberately, as though he wished to observe without being observed. "I only saw him briefly in the gallery. I did not wish to alarm anyone, thinking it a mere passerby." Poirot's eyes narrowed. And yet, he lingered where the painting hung. "Très intéressant. You may have witnessed the first clue to the crime itself, without knowing it." The detective allowed the moment to linger, observing her reactions. She avoided his gaze, yet the slight reddening of her cheeks betrayed a mixture of fear and curiosity, proof, perhaps, that she understood more than she admitted. Next, Poirot spoke with Mr. Whitlock. The art dealer received him with a smile, confident and polished. "Monsieur Poirot, how can I assist you further?" he asked smoothly, concealing his calculation behind charm. Poirot's gaze was unwavering. "Monsieur Whitlock, yesterday you claimed to have inspected the stables. Can you describe your actions in detail?" Whitlock's voice remained steady, yet a microexpression, a twitch at the corner of his mouth, betrayed unease. "I walked among the horses, spoke with the grooms, ensured everything was in order. Nothing unusual, I assure you." "Ah," Poirot said softly. "Yet you do not recall the precise duration of your visit, nor the exact time you returned to the house. Curious. One's memory is precise when the mind is at ease, yes." Whitlock's smile flickered. There may have been distractions." Poirot nodded sagely. "Distractions, OUI. And perhaps a motive hidden among them. We shall see." Finally, Poirot turned his attention to Mr. Harrow, the butler. The man maintained impeccable composure, but Poirot detected subtle signs of tension, the faint wringing of hands behind his back, a slight stiffness in posture when recounting the morning's events. "Monsieur Harrow," Poirot began, "you are the steward of this household. You observe all comings and goings, yes. Harrow inclined his head. Naturally, Monsieur Poirot. I see all that occurs within these walls, and my duty is to report nothing until appropriate. Poirot leaned slightly forward. Yet one observes, even without speaking. And sometimes, an observer's silence may reveal more than words ever could. You were near the gallery yesterday morning. Harrow's jaw tightened imperceptibly. I was attending to my duties in the morning room. I did not see anything unusual. Poirot's small eyes glimmered. We shall test that, monsieur. Observation is a skill that cannot be feigned. But tell me this, are there no hidden passages in this house? Corridors unseen, perhaps? Harrow's eyes flickered briefly, but his expression remained carefully neutral. None that I am aware of, Monsieur Poirot. Poirot's lips curved in the faintest of smiles. He rose from his chair and moved to the gallery. Alone, he examined the walls, the floor, the edges of the woodwork. His fingers traced the fine grooves along a section of paneling, and a faint outline suggested a door, a hidden compartment cleverly designed to blend seamlessly with the wall. Ah, he murmured, the corners of his moustache twitching with satisfaction. A hidden passage, the perfect route for one wishing to avoid notice. How delightful! The thief, perhaps, knew this secret, or discovered it by chance. He pushed gently, and the panel swung open with surprising ease. A narrow corridor stretched into darkness, its existence concealed from casual eyes. Poirot's heart quickened with excitement, not of danger, but of the thrill of discovery. Returning to the main hall, Poirot gathered Lady Evelyn and Sir Reginald. It seems, he said softly, that this house contains secrets not only of the past but of its very walls. A hidden passage may explain how the painting was removed without detection. But we must not jump to conclusions. The key lies in the human mind, not merely in physical roots. The detective spent the remainder of the day observing interactions among the household. He noted small, telling details, Lady Evelyn's restless glances toward the gallery, Whitlock's careful avoidance of certain topics, and Harrow's measured responses. Even minor gestures, a hand brushing against a doily, a glance held a fraction too long, a cough, were recorded meticulously in Poirot's mind. That evening, he dined quietly with Sir Reginald, discussing the painting's history and the nature of human motives. Poirot spoke at length about envy, pride, and long-standing resentments, explaining how they could manifest in actions both subtle and bold. You see, monsieur, he said, setting down his cutlery with precision, the theft is not merely an act of opportunity. It is a message, a statement, a culmination of personal feelings carefully hidden until the moment of revelation. And the human heart, as I have often observed, leaves a trace even when the body is careful to conceal it. Sir Reginald nodded, though his brow remained furrowed. I fear you may be right, Monsieur Poirot. But who among us? Poirot smiled gently, his eyes gleaming. Patience, monsieur. The solution is always nearer than one suspects. But one must observe, test, and provoke, ever so subtly, to uncover the truth. This house holds many secrets, yes, but even secrets reveal themselves to the patient eye. Later that night, Poirot walked alone through the galleries, retracing the steps he imagined the thief might have taken. The hidden passage he had discovered beckoned, a narrow corridor into darkness, and he knew that it would be central to solving the mystery. Every footprint, every overlooked object, every quiver of emotion would now be examined in light of this discovery. He paused before the empty space where the Crimson Carousel had hung, imagining the events of the previous day, the subtle movements, the calculated actions, the silent footsteps along polished floors. A thrill of anticipation ran through him. He would unravel this web, thread by thread, for he knew the human heart could be read as clearly as any manuscript. And in that quiet hall, surrounded by portraits of long-dead ancestors and the echoes of whispered histories, Poirot resolved, the secret behind the painting's disappearance, the hidden passage, and the motives driving the crime would soon be revealed. Patience, observation, and the smallest detail would illuminate the path to truth. The shadows of Ashcombe Hall were deep, but Poirot's little grey cells were deeper still. Chapter 5. The First Clue. The morning after Poirot's discovery of the hidden passage at Ashcombe Hall was heavy with tension. The air seemed charged, as though the house itself were holding its breath, awaiting the unravelling of secrets long buried. Poirot, ever composed, began his day with deliberate observation, moving quietly through corridors, noting the subtle disarray left by the previous day's turmoil. He retraced his steps through the gallery, inspecting the empty space where the Crimson Carousel had hung. The polished floor gleamed under the early sunlight, yet Poirot's sharp eyes caught a faint indentation, a footprint, narrow and small, partially obscured by a shifted rug. He bent, examining it closely. The shape suggested a delicate shoe, perhaps a lady's, though the depth implied weight beyond expectation. "Très intéressant," he murmured. A clue, yes, but also a misdirection? Perhaps both. The mind that conceives such a theft is clever indeed. Poirot then turned to the garden. The previous day, Lady Evelyn had mentioned her stroll, and now the detective sought tangible evidence that could confirm or contradict her account. Near the rose bushes, he discovered a small fragment of canvas, frayed at the edges, bearing a streak of crimson paint. It had clearly fallen from the Crimson Carousel itself. He examined it carefully, noting its texture, the subtle brushstrokes, and the tiny fibers clinging to the edges. "This," he whispered, "is not a coincidence. The thief, or perhaps a helper, left this inadvertently. A careless moment, revealing much." Poirot returned inside, carrying the fragment. He first showed it to Lady Evelyn, whose eyes widened with alarm. "Where did you find that?" she asked softly. "Ah, mademoiselle, we do not discuss what we find, only what it reveals. Tell me, have you noticed anything unusual in the house? Doors left ajar, new objects placed oddly, whispers in the night." Lady Evelyn hesitated, then nodded. "Last evening, I thought I heard movement near the gallery, though the house was quiet. I dismissed it at first." Poirot's small eyes sparkled. "Excellent. This confirms our suspicions. Someone has knowledge of the house, and someone is bold enough to use it." Later that day, Poirot summoned Mr. Whitlock to inspect the gallery. The art dealer arrived with his usual charm, but Poirot immediately noted a subtle shift in Whitlock's posture as he examined the fragment of canvas. "Curious, n'est-ce pas?" Poirot asked, placing the fragment upon the desk. "It fell from the painting during its removal. Tell me, monsieur, what do you observe?" Whitlock crouched, studying it. "A piece of the original frame is missing," he said slowly. "But hardly enough to deduce anything definitive." Poirot's eyes narrowed slightly. "Ah, but monsieur, one must observe all, every fragment, every mark. The smallest detail can reveal the largest truth." He gestured toward the hidden passage. "This corridor, unseen by casual eyes, may have been the route taken. Yet how it connects with the fragment, the footprint, and the timing, that is the true puzzle." Poirot spent the afternoon mapping out potential scenarios, walking through the hidden corridor, noting where one might emerge unseen, and testing his theories against the clues. He considered Lady Evelyn's stroll, Whitlock's unexplained gaps in timing, and Harrow's subtle tension. All were threads in a web he was only beginning to untangle. As evening approached, he returned to the drawing room and requested the household gather once more. He wished to test reactions subtly, observing microexpressions and body language for signs of guilt, nervousness, or knowledge beyond what was voluntarily offered. "Miss Amos," he began softly, "yesterday's events have left clues, some deliberate, some accidental. The painting was removed, yes, but not without leaving evidence. A footprint here, a fragment there, a smear of paint, each tells a story. Yet stories may lie, may mislead, and may point toward a false direction. He watched closely as Lady Evelyn's fingers trembled slightly while clasping a teacup. Whitlock's gaze flicked briefly toward the hidden panel in the gallery, though he quickly looked away. Harrow maintained his usual stoic posture, yet Poirot observed the faint crease between his brows, subtle tension at the corners of his eyes. Poirot then spoke of motive, careful not to accuse, but to provoke subtle reactions. Consider the reasons one might remove such a painting. Financial gain, perhaps, but the painting is insured. Revenge? Pride? Or perhaps a personal grievance, hidden for years, finally acted upon. Lady Evelyn's eyes widened imperceptibly, and Poirot's gaze softened. Ah, mademoiselle, even silence can speak volumes. We shall see what the heart truly reveals. He then called attention to the footprint in the gallery. Notice its small size and delicate impression. It is not definitive evidence, yes, but it suggests, perhaps, a female presence. Or a male with careful steps. One must always question what the mind assumes. Deception is often concealed in plain sight. The fragment of canvas, he noted, bore crimson paint consistent with the painting itself, yet slightly smeared, as though the thief had handled it hastily or been interrupted. Ah, interruptions often leave the most revealing traces, Poirot mused. Poirot's thoughts turned to the past, recalling the history of the Crimson Carousel. Owners had vanished, quarrels had erupted, scandals had followed. He began to consider the possibility that the thief was not motivated by simple gain but by a deeper, more personal vendetta. Perhaps a long-standing grievance had festered, culminating in yesterday's audacious act. To test his theory, Poirot devised a subtle plan. He asked that the household retire for the evening, but arranged for small, staged disturbances, a door left slightly ajar, a chair moved subtly, a faint noise from the hidden corridor. He observed the reactions, noting tension, glances, and hesitation. The results were telling. Lady Evelyn flinched, yet recovered quickly. Whitlock's eyes darted toward the corridor and lingered longer than propriety demanded. Harrow's stance shifted, ever so slightly, as though resisting a temptation to move toward the source of the disturbance. Each reaction, though subtle, was a piece of the puzzle. By late evening, Poirot retired to the library. The clues of the day, the footprint, the fragment, the smear of paint, and the reactions of the household, formed a complex mosaic in his mind. He understood that the thief had knowledge of the house, familiarity with the household's habits, and a motive beyond simple theft. He whispered softly to himself, stroking his moustache, the game is indeed more intricate than I anticipated. The threads of past grievances, human desire, and opportunity intertwine. Soon, we shall see which thread leads to truth. Poirot leaned back, the fragment of canvas held delicately in his fingers. The shadows of the hall stretched long in the fading light, but he was untroubled. In every mark, every hesitation, every trace left by human hands, he saw the path toward resolution. The Crimson Carousel was gone, yes, but the thief had left breadcrumbs. And Poirot, with his unparalleled skill in observing the smallest details, would follow them, carefully, patiently, inevitably, to the truth. Chapter 6, The Unexpected Visitor. The morning air at Ashcombe Hall carried a chill, hinting at the coming winter, yet inside the house, tension simmered like a hidden fire. Poirot had spent the previous evening in quiet contemplation, reviewing the evidence, the footprint, the fragment of canvas, and the subtle smear of crimson paint. Each clue suggested opportunity, yet it was the human element, the reactions, the hesitations, the unspoken fears, that had captured his attention most keenly. As he sipped his morning tea, Harrow appeared at the door with a formal announcement. Monsieur Poirot, there is a visitor at the gates. A gentleman requesting to see you immediately. Poirot's small eyes lit up with interest. A visitor, you say? Très bien. Let us see what manner of person arrives, and what secrets he may carry in his eyes. The visitor was ushered into the drawing-room. He was a tall man, dark-haired, with a sharp, angular face and piercing eyes that seemed to measure the room with calculated precision. He carried himself with a calm authority, yet Poirot detected a subtle tension in the way he shifted his weight from foot to foot. "Monsieur Poirot," the man began, his voice smooth and controlled, "my name is Mr. Alistair Crane. I have come regarding the Crimson Carousel." Poirot inclined his head slightly. "Ah, Monsieur Crane. Please, sit. Pray tell, what brings you to Ashcombe Hall? I presume your knowledge is more than casual." Crane settled into a chair, his gaze flickering momentarily to the empty space where the painting had hung. "I have been studying the history of the painting for some time. Its disappearance concerns me deeply. I may be able to assist in its recovery." Poirot noted the carefully measured words, the slight hesitation before the last sentence. It was subtle, but to the trained eye, it spoke volumes. "Indeed? And what, pray, is your interest in this particular work?" Crane's eyes narrowed slightly, a flicker almost imperceptible. "I am a collector myself. I have followed the painting for years. It has a certain significance, both artistically and historically. I feel compelled to ensure its safety." Poirot's moustache twitched faintly. "Ah, compulsion. That is often the motive that drives the boldest actions. Very well, monsieur. But allow me to observe, knowledge of history alone does not imply direct involvement, does it?" Crane smiled, though the tension in his posture remained. "Of course not. I would never," he hesitated, and Poirot's eyes narrowed. That pause, almost imperceptible, revealed a truth unspoken. Crane knew more than he revealed. Poirot's next step was subtle, almost theatrical in its simplicity. "Monsieur Crane, I have arranged a small demonstration of household routines today. We shall see how events unfold naturally, and how reactions occur." Crane inclined his head, accepting the proposal. Poirot's plan was simple but effective: allow the visitor to witness a minor stage disruption, then observe the response. He had discovered the hidden corridor the previous day, and he intended to use it to test the visitor's familiarity with the house. By mid-morning, Poirot had positioned himself in the gallery, ostensibly examining the floor, while Crane and several members of the household were near the drawing-room door. Poirot subtly adjusted a chair, leaving it slightly askew, and opened the hidden panel just enough to suggest that passage might be used. He observed quietly. Crane's eyes flicked toward the panel almost immediately, a brief, controlled movement that betrayed recognition. He leaned slightly forward, as though weighing the opportunity to investigate further, but restrained himself. Poirot noted the exact moment and the micro-expression that accompanied it, a slight narrowing of the eyes, the faintest tightening around the mouth. "Ah," Poirot murmured softly, "so, monsieur knows the passage, yes?" Perhaps more than he admits. Lady Evelyn and Mr. Whitlock noticed nothing, moving about in polite conversation, their gestures and expressions providing Poirot with a baseline of normalcy against which he could compare Crane's subtle deviations. Later, in private, Poirot spoke with Crane. "Monsieur, you observed something this morning, yes? The passage, perhaps? Tell me, what thoughts crossed your mind?" Crane's eyes narrowed, but he answered cautiously. "I considered its use, yes. For inspection only. I assure you, I did not enter." Poirot nodded slowly, though the corners of his moustache twitched with satisfaction. "Ah, but consider this, monsieur, knowledge alone can be dangerous. Awareness of hidden routes, observation of habits, timing of arrivals, all these are tools in a delicate game. One can observe without acting, yes, but can one resist opportunity when motive is compelling?" Crane's jaw tightened subtly, a micro-expression that betrayed inner conflict. Poirot noted it with precision. Patience, patience, the truth emerges in small increments. By afternoon, Poirot had arranged another subtle test. He instructed Harrow to move about the house in a deliberate, unusual manner, opening doors that were normally closed, carrying objects in unexpected places, and creating faint, accidental noises near the hidden corridor. Poirot observed reactions carefully, noting which individuals displayed tension, curiosity, or recognition. Crane's reactions were telling. Each small disturbance drew his attention immediately, his gaze flickering to the hidden panel, his body poised as if ready to intervene. Yet he did not act. His restraint spoke not of innocence but of calculation, a careful weighing of risk and reward. Poirot recorded each observation silently, cataloguing gestures, microexpressions, and the almost imperceptible timing of reactions. He did not speak of his suspicions to anyone, for he knew that premature accusations could disrupt the delicate balance of evidence. As evening descended, Poirot gathered the household once more. He spoke of the importance of observation, of subtle signals, and the ways in which humans inadvertently reveal truths they might wish to conceal. "Miss Amos," he said softly, "we must consider all possibilities. Knowledge can be a weapon. Opportunity can be a temptation. And sometimes, even a visitor, arriving unannounced, carries both in equal measure." Crane's eyes flicked toward Poirot, briefly meeting his gaze. Poirot returned the look steadily, unblinking. "Ah, the little grey cells are ever vigilant," he thought. "And Monsieur Crane's reactions have provided us a most instructive lesson." That night, Poirot retired to the library, reviewing his notes and the observations of the day. The hidden passage, the reactions of Crane, and the subtle clues already gathered painted a complex picture. The theft was not a simple crime of opportunity but a carefully orchestrated act, guided by knowledge, observation, and human motives hidden beneath the surface. Poirot leaned back in his chair, eyes glinting with satisfaction. "OUI, Miss Amos, the game deepens. The visitor has revealed more than he intended, though subtly. And the threads of motive, opportunity, and knowledge intertwine ever more tightly. Soon, all shall be revealed, patience, precision, and the small grey cells will prevail, as always." The shadows of Ashcombe Hall stretched long in the moonlight, yet Poirot was undisturbed. He had glimpsed the faint outline of truth, and he knew that the next steps would bring him closer to uncovering the clever mind behind the disappearance of the Crimson Carousel. Chapter 7: Threads Converging. The morning at Ashcombe Hall was unusually still. Even the autumn wind, which usually whispered through the tall trees surrounding the estate, seemed to pause in anticipation. Hercule Poirot had risen early, as was his habit, and sat quietly in the library, reviewing his notes and reflecting on the sequence of events. Each detail, each micro-expression, each fragment of evidence was now part of a growing tapestry, though the final picture remained tantalizingly out of reach. Poirot began with the obvious, the hidden passage. He had examined it thoroughly, noting its subtle concealment, the wear of the floorboards, and the marks that suggested occasional, careful use. It was a clever device, one that would allow a determined person to move unseen, yet it was not sufficient in itself to commit the crime. The human element, the mind that knew, the hand that acted, was paramount. He considered the fragment of canvas and the smear of crimson paint, both of which had been overlooked by all but himself. These were not just traces of the stolen painting, they were markers of human error, the inadvertent signatures of a thief who had been too confident. And the footprint, small, narrow, almost delicate, did not conform entirely to expectations, suggesting the careful manipulation of appearances. Poirot smiled faintly, the corners of his moustache twitching. Ah, the cleverness of man, always a challenge to the small grey cells, yet never beyond them. He summoned Lady Evelyn to the library first. Her composure was perfect, but her eyes betrayed a hint of nervous anticipation. "Mademoiselle," Poirot began, "yesterday, you mentioned observing a visitor in the gallery. Today, I wish to understand the precise timing, the duration, and your own thoughts when you saw him. Please do not omit a single detail. Lady Evelyn recounted her memory carefully. Poirot noted the minute pauses, the flicker of hesitation, the subtle gestures of her hands as she spoke. These were not signs of deceit, he realized, but of uncertainty, of information withheld from her own certainty, perhaps. Très bien, he said softly. Observation alone can reveal as much as action. And your observations, mademoiselle, are valuable indeed. Next, he spoke with Mr. Whitlock, the art dealer. His charm had dulled somewhat over the past days, replaced by a faint tension that Poirot detected immediately. Monsieur Whitlock, Poirot said gently, you have been most helpful in describing your movements. Yet there are gaps, small, perhaps innocuous, yet intriguing. Can you explain why you could not recall the exact duration of your visit to the stables yesterday morning? Whitlock's eyes flickered, his lips tightening briefly. I was delayed. Attending to details that I had not anticipated. Poirot inclined his head. Ah. Unexpected delays often teach us much about character. One observes not only what is said, but what is withheld. And what is withheld, in time, becomes the most revealing clue of all. Finally, Poirot turned his attention to Harrow, the butler. The man remained impassive outwardly, yet Poirot detected subtle signs of tension, the minute shifting of weight, the faint narrowing of eyes, the brief twitch of a hand. Monsieur Harrow, Poirot said softly, you know this house intimately. You observe all that transpires. Tell me, are there any unusual activities in the house you have noticed in recent days? Harrow's jaw tightened imperceptibly. No unusual activity, Monsieur Poirot. Only small disturbances, as expected with visitors. Poirot's eyes twinkled. Ah, but even the smallest disturbances leave a trace. And one who is observant, Monsieur, notes even what others fail to see. Satisfied, Poirot spent the remainder of the morning retracing steps throughout the house, mapping movements, calculating timings, and reconstructing the possible paths the thief could have taken. The hidden passage, he realized, was only part of the solution. Human observation, opportunity, and motive were equally crucial, and in this intricate dance, the smallest error could reveal everything. By afternoon, Poirot had arranged a subtle test to provoke reactions. A small object, a decorative vase, was moved from its usual place in the gallery, and a faint noise was made near the hidden corridor. Poirot observed carefully from a discreet vantage point. Lady Evelyn flinched slightly, but recovered immediately. Mr. Whitlock's eyes darted toward the corridor, lingering longer than propriety required. Harrow remained outwardly calm, yet Poirot detected the tiniest clench of fists and the faint stiffening of posture. Poirot then called Crane to the library under a pretense of seeking advice on provenance. Monsieur Crane, he began, I have been reviewing the history of the painting, and I cannot help but notice that it seems to follow certain patterns. Owners vanish, disputes arise, and yet the painting always reappears. Curious, n'est-ce pas? Crane's expression remained composed, but Poirot noted the subtle tension around his eyes. It is a curious history, yes. But how does that concern the present, Monsieur Poirot? Poirot's voice was gentle, almost conversational. Ah, but we cannot separate past from present. The human mind is a continuum. Past grievances, unresolved jealousy, and hidden knowledge may converge at the perfect moment to guide action. One might even say, temptation is irresistible to those with knowledge and opportunity. Crane's jaw tightened subtly. I assure you, Monsieur Poirot, I have no such motives. My concern is purely academic. Perhaps, Poirot replied softly, and yet even the purest concern may conceal other truths. One must always observe not only words, but their cadence, the tension between sentences, and the little gestures one cannot control. These, Ms. Amos, are the language of the heart. Later, Poirot gathered the household for a seemingly casual discussion of the painting's history and significance. He spoke deliberately, weaving subtle suggestions about motive, opportunity, and human foibles into his conversation. As he spoke, he watched reactions with careful precision. Lady Evelyn's fingers trembled ever so slightly as she adjusted her teacup. Mr. Whitlock's eyes flicked to the hidden corridor, betraying an awareness he sought to conceal. Harrow's posture shifted, faint but telling, and Crane's gaze, though controlled, betrayed the shadow of inner conflict. Poirot smiled inwardly. The threads were converging. Clues, behaviors, and subtle inconsistencies were beginning to form a pattern, and soon, he realized, the truth would emerge, not in a sudden revelation, but in the patient unveiling of evidence and insight. By evening, Poirot retired to his quarters to review the day's observations. He carefully compiled notes on each individual, their movements, reactions, and potential motives. Every gesture, every hesitation, every glance was now part of a growing map of human behavior. "Oh, he murmured to himself, stroking his moustache, the threads are indeed converging. Each observation, each clue, each subtle sign points toward a solution. And soon, very soon, the puzzle shall be complete." Poirot's mind, ever methodical, was already formulating the final steps. The hidden passage, the fragment of canvas, the footprint, the smear of paint, and the intricate psychology of each household member, all these would soon coalesce. He closed his notebook, satisfied. The next day would bring confrontation, subtle traps, and the final pieces of the puzzle. The Crimson Carousel, still missing, would finally reveal its secrets, and the clever hand behind its disappearance would be exposed. For now, the house remained quiet, the autumn wind whispering through the trees, and Poirot, ever vigilant, allowed himself a faint smile. The endgame was near. Chapter 8: The Unmasking. The morning at Ashcombe Hall was crisp, with sunlight streaming through the tall windows, illuminating the gallery where the Crimson Carousel had once hung. Hercule Poirot, small, precise, and immaculate as ever, sat in the library, reflecting on the evidence. Every clue, every hesitation, every fragment of human behavior had been recorded, considered, and catalogued in his mind. Today, he would bring the threads together, and the truth would emerge as clearly as the morning light. Poirot summoned the entire household to the gallery, insisting that all be present. The air was charged with anticipation, each person sensed that the final chapter of this mystery was upon them. Even Mr. Whitlock, usually composed, seemed slightly uneasy, and Crane's calm authority carried a subtle tension beneath the surface. Poirot began with a serene smile. "Miss Amos, the mystery of the Crimson Carousel is complete. The threads of human behavior, the footprints, the fragment of canvas, and even the hidden passage have all led us here. And now, the truth shall be revealed." He gestured toward the empty space where the painting had been. "Observe, if you will, the marks upon the floorboards." Poirot crouched slightly, pointing to the faint indentation of a footprint. This footprint, narrow and delicate, suggested a presence, careful, almost deliberate, yet revealing more than the eye could see. It is not merely the size of the shoe that matters, but the weight it bore and the way it was placed. The one who walked here sought to appear less conspicuous than he truly was. Poirot then lifted the fragment of canvas, displaying the faint streak of crimson. "And this piece of the painting, inadvertently left behind, confirms the route taken. The hidden passage, discovered yesterday, provided the means of entry and exit, but it was not sufficient to complete the theft without knowledge of the household's movements." He turned to Lady Evelyn. "Mademoiselle, your observations were of great value. You saw a visitor in the gallery yesterday. Did you notice him linger longer than propriety demanded?" Lady Evelyn nodded, her expression careful yet earnest. "Yes, Monsieur Poirot. He seemed curious, as though he knew more than he should." Poirot's eyes twinkled. Ah, excellent. And indeed, he did. That visitor, Miss Amidst, is none other than Monsieur Alistair Crane. He paused, allowing the words to sink in. Crane's composed expression faltered for the briefest instant, a micro-expression invisible to the untrained eye but unmistakable to Poirot. Crane's voice remained calm, though a subtle tightening of the jaw betrayed tension. Monsieur Poirot, I assure you, I have no knowledge of. Poirot raised a hand with gentle authority. Please, monsieur, allow me to explain. You are a collector, yes, but more than that, you are a man who has long desired the Crimson Carousel. You studied its history, traced its past owners, and discovered the secret of the hidden passage. Opportunity and desire combined, and yesterday, you acted to possess the painting for yourself. The assembled household gasped softly, and even Whitlock's eyes widened slightly. Poirot continued, undeterred. Consider, Miss Amidst, the small details. The fragment of canvas bore traces of paint smeared, suggesting haste or interruption. The footprint was narrow yet bore the weight of a heavier man, indicating careful manipulation. Monsieur Crane's reactions to subtle disturbances yesterday morning confirmed his knowledge of the passage. And finally, his hesitation in conversation, though small, involuntary gestures, revealed the truth of his motives. Crane's composure cracked ever so slightly. Monsieur Poirot, I did not intend for it to go so far. I meant only to secure it temporarily, until I could negotiate a purchase. I did not steal it for profit, only ownership. Poirot nodded sagely. Ah, but the mind deceives, monsieur. Intention matters less than action. An action leaves traces, whether in paint, footprint, or the fleeting shadow of a glance. You acted, and therefore, the truth emerges. He then turned to the others. Mr. Whitlock, your charm is most effective, yet your eyes betrayed fleeting concern whenever the hidden corridor was mentioned. You, too, observed, but without participation. Your anxiety was natural, given your profession, and confirms your innocence. And Harrow, ever diligent, your measured restraint concealed tension, as you realized that knowledge alone could implicate you if misinterpreted. Poirot paused, surveying the room, his small eyes alight with satisfaction. Finally, Mademoiselle, Lady Evelyn, your courage and observation were invaluable. Had you not noticed the visitor's lingering presence, the deception might have remained hidden longer. Your attention to subtle detail assisted greatly in unraveling this mystery. Poirot motioned Crane forward. Now, monsieur, it is time to retrieve the painting. You know where it is hidden. Crane hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. Yes. In the secret panel of the gallery, where I intended to remove it quietly and take it to my own collection. With Poirot leading the way, Crane opened the hidden panel, revealing the Crimson Carousel, carefully wrapped but intact. The assembled household breathed collectively, a mixture of relief and astonishment washing over them. Poirot examined the painting closely, noting the fine detail of the carousel horses, the vibrant crimson, and the subtle spiraling symbol in the corner that had been a recurring clue in the painting's history. Ah, the artist's mark, Poirot murmured. Even the most careful thief cannot remove history itself. And so the painting returns, undamaged, yet revealing the folly of those who would possess it illicitly. He turned to Crane, his expression firm but composed. Monsieur, the law must now take its course. Your knowledge, opportunity, and action have all been revealed. The human mind cannot hide from the small grey cells of Hercule Poirot. Crane's shoulders slumped, a gesture of reluctant acknowledgement. Yes, Monsieur Poirot. I understand. You have outwitted me completely. Poirot's eyes twinkled. Mais oui, monsieur. It is always the small details, the hesitation, the micro-expression, the fragment of evidence, that betray the truth. And in human nature there is no deception so complete that it cannot be uncovered by observation, patience, and reasoning. He then addressed the household. Let this be a lesson to all: observe carefully, question thoroughly, and never underestimate the subtle interplay of motive, opportunity, and knowledge. Even the most artful deception leaves traces, and the smallest clue can illuminate the entire path to truth. Lady Evelyn smiled, relieved. Monsieur Poirot, your brilliance never ceases to amaze. I had feared the painting was lost forever. Poirot inclined his head modestly, his eyes gleaming with satisfaction. Ah, mademoiselle, the pleasure lies in the pursuit of truth. The painting has been returned, the mystery resolved, and all loose threads now woven into clarity. Harmony is restored. As the household exhaled collectively, Poirot allowed himself a rare moment of quiet reflection. The Crimson Carousel had been returned, the thief apprehended, and the intricate web of human behavior had been revealed in its entirety. The small grey cells had triumphed once again, illuminating the hidden motives, subtle deceptions, and the consequences of desire. And in the calm that followed, Ashcombe Hall returned to its peaceful rhythm. The painting hung once more in the gallery, secure, admired, and a testament to the cleverness of its observers and the enduring wisdom of Hercule Poirot. For Poirot, the resolution was more than the recovery of a stolen work of art, it was the satisfaction of a mind exercised, a puzzle solved, and the human heart understood.